This documentary was filmed and produced on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Black Metal Fantasy was a stage production that I wrote in my graduation year, my grade 12 graduation year. I had accumulated over the last few years in high school a number of tricks. I had done a few magic shows, and admittedly, again, I wasn't disciplined enough to really pursue magic the way I should have, and that was my own flaw. Those were my flaws. I like to blame it on the fact that I'm a Gemini and the Mercury mind and stuff for those who believe in the astrology, and I kind of do. But I definitely had a less than focused mind in the pursuit of my career.
I remember it was again a big undertaking for a young person, a young crew, and I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't polished, definitely wasn't polished, but now I understand that it needed a lot more support than it got. But I thought kudos for putting it on and promoting it.
Now, my first memories of the Black Metal Fantasy, and I cannot stress how life-changing this was for me. I was cutting through the Jewish Community Center to get home. I heard these familiar voices in the auditorium, and they were basically doing like these magic incantations or something. And I stood outside the auditorium watching a rehearsal for the Black Metal Fantasy in awe, going, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I wish I could play. And I'm watching, and they take a break, and I will never forget kind of what happened next. And Steve was there, and Scott were there, and Steve's looking at me and went, you used to do magic, right, Mark? And I went, yeah. And then he's looking at me going, you're tall. I'm like, sure? And Scott goes, and you can act, right? And next thing I know, I am being offered the role of a Doma in the Black Metal Fantasy. And my life has literally never been the same.
And what Black Metal Fantasy was going to be was a story of a battle between two sorcerers. A good sorcerer, Orion, that was me, and Santar, the leader of the Dark Realm, the evil sorcerer who was played by a local actor and celebrity named Scott, who has gone on to have a great career in movies, television, and huge career in voiceover work, an absolute huge career in voiceover work.
There's nothing disingenuous or scammy about Steve. He just is Steve. But when he was doing magic, when he was making the show happen, there was a level of focus and seriousness and intent. Even when we were doing the Black Metal Fantasy in high school, even when I was pretty sure the entire intent of the Black Metal Fantasy was so that he could make out with Jackie Norlander.
Plans was to relaunch the show, because the first show, nothing really came out of it. We had a great audience, got great, everybody really enjoyed it, but this is 1979. Like there was no major media coverage of it. There was nobody there, even though we invited media to cover it and everything. We didn't get anything. Nothing came of it. So the idea then was to do another production. And this is when Mark and I agree that when this curse came upon us.
The Black Metal Fantasy, in a lot of ways, was the perfect introduction to showbiz, because we met somebody very early on whose name I probably am not supposed to say because all of the lawyers at this production would not approve. But we had somebody who promised to bankroll creating a bigger and better show, and discovered that basically the promise of money was smoke and mirrors.
And we wanted to do it, but we knew we needed more. We needed to make this production a little bit better, so we needed to get some capital, you know, some money into the production to help us make some props, do some cool things with it. And he said, you know what, let's do this. I have like $2,500 in my bank account, and I'm willing to give it to this production so we can get the props and stuff. And we got all excited. He said, get everybody together. We got the whole cast together and tell them. And I told everybody, okay, we're going to do it again, and this time we're going to have some money to do it all, and we're going to have a great production. We're going to put on something on. So we started doing the rehearsals, and then we needed to start getting the props built. And so we went to him, and I said, hey buddy, we need to get some money, stuff. Can you give us a couple $100 so we can get some wood and we can get some materials, some for the backdrops and everything? And he just kind of he says, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, I quit, and then walked away. To Mark and I, this was a curse that kind of haunted us for years after, and we literally named it after this person. And this is, again, where the magic principle really came into play throughout my career.
And this led to, the showbiz reality of we just kept running into various things in both our lives where we would get this close to the big money, and then it would vanish. What I remember about how Steve handled the lack of success was a mix. Because on the one hand, there were moments when he got understandably super depressed. But on the other hand, he was like, so when are we doing the next one? And how are we getting on stage again? And it is, to my mind, such an important part of Steve's story that after doing the black metal fantasy, The Initiation, because in a lot of ways, the black metal fantasy, the original black metal fantasy, was a success.